Let's get right to the headline of the day. Earlier today, the Knicks released a statement with a medical update of Kristaps Porzingis, citing good progress, setting a mid-February timetable for another evaluation with benchmarks along the way. February makes it a full year since the original injury. So do we know yet if he's going to play this season?
No, we don't know yet. Kristaps has made good progress. We felt good from a medical perspective. The MRI was a good MRI. We had physically, he was examined by the doctors, and then we went through a battery of performance tests that involved jumping and force plate measurements and all kinds of different agility drills, and he's making good progress. So we feel good that he's making steps. We actually he's advanced to doing some work on the court with our coaching staff, and we're going to still see how he's progressing, and we'll do another series of tests sometime in mid-February.
You mentioned earlier today that you've actually watched him recently working out on the court with a coach. So what is he doing right now, basketball-wise?
I happened to be in my office, can see out onto the court yesterday, and he was out on the court doing some three-quarter court sprinting type drills and taking pull-up threes, a couple of dunks. So he was out there with the coach for 45 minutes or so, and so we felt good about the progress he's making.
Good to see him out on a basketball court doing basketball things, for sure. We're 40% now into the season, believe it or not. Give an assessment of where the franchise is, not just on the court, but overall, because you talked about the development of a franchise is not just on the floor.
Yeah, this is we're moving in the right direction. This is an arduous task that we have embarked upon about rebuilding a franchise and changing the culture. So we're obviously not satisfied with the wins and losses, with the wins and losses, the record, but we feel like culturally and the environment that we're creating with our players and our coaching staff and getting guys to grow as players and get better, we're moving in that direction. We just haven't figured out a way with this young group of guys how to not dig holes and how to not have bad quarters. But those are the kinds of things that come with growth, and you can't fast forward those kinds of things.
So would you say then the expectations are what you thought it would be, where the team would be right now?
Yes, in some ways. I mean, we wanted to know that these guys were going to compete night in and night out and never feel like they're down on themselves and can't win basketball games. And what I like and what makes us feel good is that even when this young team and these young guys dig themselves a hole, you worry about their psyche. You worry about the mentality of, can I really come back from this? And I believe this team always feels like they can get back in a game and give themselves a chance to win.
With that in mind, David Fizdale was a hire that you guys made this offseason, you and Scott Perry. Is he the coach that you expected that he'd be?
Yes, he is. It's one of the things that we talked about when we met with David was his ability to connect with players and his ability and willingness to build a staff that makes sense for the team that we had. So he's connected with the players. He's one of those coaches that details matter, making guys accountable to what you're trying to teach them how to do, and most importantly, make them feel good about the progress that they're making, make them feel confident about what they can become as basketball players. He does an excellent job of that.
And you probably have to provide support not just with players about getting through wins and losses, but for him as a coach, he has to wear that record.
Oh, this is a tough thing for a coach because you don't want him to lose track of what the long-term goals are, but we understand he's the one out there on the court every night having to suffer through these wins and losses. But, our job is to keep him propped up, and between our entire group, our job is to make sure these guys feel confident and feel like we believe in them and that we're holding them accountable to the progress they should be making.
That's the youngest roster in the NBA, so obviously a lot of young players and 3 rookies on this team. Before I even get to the lottery pick, the guy that wasn't even a draft pick, Alonzo Trier, how much of a surprise was he, or did you kind of see this, and how does he not get drafted?
Well, I'm happy he didn't get drafted. But, the NBA is a funny beast sometimes. You have players that, for whatever reason, he had the PED situation in college that made a lot of people go south on him. But we had him come in, spent 2 or 3 days with us. Scott and I spent a lot of time talking to him, understanding sort of his story, his past, how he's gotten to where he is, what he feels about himself as a basketball player. We did a lot of due diligence. We spoke to his college coach, and we felt like there was something beyond the problems he had in college. And we felt when he was given an opportunity to play in a more open system at the NBA level, that actually the things that made him an elite high school player were going to show and shine in the NBA environment. So obviously we didn't expect him to move this quickly because we signed him to a two-way contract, but we obviously are excited to have him.
Kevin Knox, a 19-year-old, what are you seeing with his development? Just
the growth and confidence that's growing every single game. When you think about it, he's a 19-year-old kid, and we have these big player development meetings. There are probably like 25 people from the organization in the meetings, and we got to Kevin Knox, and we're talking about him, and we're worried. We're trying to figure out ways to help him finish better in the paint. And finally, one of our strength and conditioning guys said, "Listen, he's 19. His core is not developed enough for him to be able to physically do what we want him to do. A year from now, he'll be able to finish those with no problem." So that's what we're dealing with a guy who's 19 years old and is just new to what he's facing every night.
In December, he's been a much different player for sure. Frank Ntilikina, the fan base is very passionate about him. What are you seeing? Your eyes, what are you seeing in his progress?
You know, we know Frank can defend. We know he can be an elite defensive player. He shows glimpses of being able to do some things on the offensive end that are positive. But, you know, we talk about this all the time. Our job is to figure out how do we pour confidence into Frank, that he feels confident about his offensive side of his game. And Scott Fizdale, Craig Robinson, we all talk about that. And that's something that we have to figure out a way to keep him energized and keep him feeling good about himself.
Now, obviously, in the offseason, there's going to be a lot of big names in free agency. Are you going to be able to create cap space to maybe go after one or two?
We will be able to create enough cap space to go after one free agent, but that's really a byproduct of the way we just designed our roster. Really, our goal is to focus on the guys that we currently have on the roster. How can we see if we can get the best out of them, and hopefully they'll force us to make some difficult decisions about creating cap space.
And in the meantime, obviously, this team still has a season to finish and more progress to be made with young players. And 2019 certainly is going to be an interesting one for the Knicks. Thanks, Steve, very much, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you, too. Thanks for having me.